There are few greater challenges than saving lives after serious injuries.
You're shot, you have to go to the operating room.
I'm Dr. Kevin Fong. I want to see for myself how lives are saved in some of the world's most extraordinary trauma centres.
This guy stabbed in the chest with a screwdriver, he's fully arrested. Here we go.
As a doctor, I've seen a lot.
Hey! Motherfucker!
But you've never seen it all. I'll be joining ER doctors across the world who are amongst the best at dealing with extreme trauma, from car crashes to stab wounds and gunshot victims.
Did you get assaulted to or just shot?
I've been given special access to get up close and see these elite teams in action, to learn the lessons that might improve our own A&Es.
I want to learn the secrets of these trauma units and how they manage to save lives that would otherwise be lost. I want to show you the world of trauma medicine through a doctor's eyes.
And trauma is something or a series of things that have happened to an individual that has made one lose some sense of freedom. And with that freedom, meaning maybe has lost some sense of agency and meaning. In that vein of how we use the word trauma, there's so many things that can be encompassed by that word. But when I think about who's sitting in front of me, and when I think about, what happened to you, really the thing that is what I would label as trauma is what happened that contributed to your loss of freedom.
What do we mean when we're talking about trauma, and why is it important for us to understand today?
And trauma is something or a series of things that have happened to an individual that has made one lose some sense of freedom. And with that freedom, meaning maybe has lost some sense of agency and meaning. In that vein of how we use the word trauma, there's so many things that can be encompassed by that word. But when I think about who's sitting in front of me, and when I think about, what happened to you, really the thing that is what I would label as trauma is what happened that contributed to your loss of freedom.
Why should someone who hasn't experienced that version of trauma find this conversation interesting and kind of like, how can they reframe what that even means to them?
It really is. It can come from series of invalidating experiences, a childhood in an environment in which you were not supported or not given any sort of compassion. And I think I'll quote Resmaa Menakem, because I think he says it best, and this really resonates with me. So Resmaa Menakem is a social worker who talks a lot about how trauma lives in our body from a framework of racial trauma, and how his field is called somatic abolitionism. So how do we use our bodies to heal from racism that has been imbued on us for generations and generations?
Is it a healthy thing for us to think about the fact that actually everyone, including maybe some of those far-right pundits, are dealing with some element of trauma that's created the kind of responses that they're locked in?
I should know the statistic, but only a certain percentage of people that have experienced a more violent trauma will actually go on to have what we call as post-traumatic stress syndrome. And, it's always shocking to me that, PTSD came into the DSM, I think, in the 80s. And the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, which is American Psychological Association. So it's how we diagnose people. So what are the criteria for various psychiatric disorders? So this is where you would distinguish just being depressed from clinical depression, or being anxious from generalized anxiety disorder. Soldiers and coming back from war, they're having these symptoms of re-experiencing a memory. So feeling like you were back there, having these flashbacks. Basically that the trauma, the experience is still happening, right? Even when you return to a safe environment, that re-experiencing that hypervigilance, which is kind of always being on edge, the nightmares, the what I would call hyperarousal state, that you're always in a state of threat, are some of the main criteria of PTSD, along with avoiding certain triggers as to not get you back into that fear state.
How does one identify or become aware of which parts of their experience in life, or which moments, or which environmental conditions or social conditions are negatively impacting them and are creating that trauma, whether strong or otherwise, that's present in their lives?
I think how people will come to it usually, and this is one of those painful truths of the world, is that something does happen. There is a rupture, kind of connecting to that first rupture of exiting the womb. There's going to be many ruptures in your life after that, and there will be something that happens, and it could be a breakup, a loss of a job, a loss of a loved one. And these aren't even just traumatic events, like just not feeling like you're disconnected from self. Individual psychotherapy is one specific form of practicing self-awareness, but there are so many forms of doing this, right? So like meditation, finding a spiritual space, engaging in an artistic, but again, something that you're doing kind of with yourself. And I see the therapist as sort of like functioning as a mirror. So something where you're cultivating, like, okay, what is keeping me stuck?
What do we do? What helps? What generates healing or positive movement around some of these patterns?
I think everything's relational, everything's connected, and I think relationships are what heals us. So again, thinking broadly about what relationship is, that is, relationship to friends, to families, to partners, to therapists, to spiritual guides, but also to communities, to nature, to your non-human companions. Some sort of corrective experience through a relationship can be extremely powerful to heal some of those wounds that have disconnected us.